Welcome to Spiritual Truths with your host, Kerry-Marie. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Amanda Cleghorn. Amanda is an international nutritionist, and we're discussing your body is your temple and how you can bring quality to your life through having a good nutritional and balanced diet. Amanda has been practicing for 14 years. She's very knowledgeable and she'll be sharing her knowledge with you in this podcast. Welcome, Amanda. It's so great to see you again.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking today a lot about nutrition and the body's your temple. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about how we first met. And so, as you know, I had been unwell. I had been rushed to hospital with pleurisy, and then the year after that, I had a really bad flu. And I went to a naturopath to try and help me because I felt that my physical health needed addressing. And it was great. However, the naturopath wasn't able to give me any advice on nutrition, which I found really frustrating because I've always believed in nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
So I went along to see you thinking I was having a healthy diet. And I remember you said to me, well, Kerry-Marie, a salad really isn't lettuce, tomato and cucumber. You need a little bit more in there. And you emphasised like the rainbow. I remember you telling me that. And every time I came to see you, I felt really empowered. And it just felt right because I've had an interest in nutrition my whole life. And I just felt empowered and I felt ready. I felt ready is a word. And then, so it really helped my health. And it's like 9 years ago. And I'm probably healthier now, 9 years older than I was back then.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Great to hear. You look really good.
Thank you. So I still follow everything the steps that you take and keep myself informed. So you can just tell me a little about yourself, Amanda.
Well, that's a lovely introduction. Thank you. And I am just so passionate about nutrition. And for those exact cases, I feel like you came to me with a fairly good diet, but it's just those little tweaks that you can make that can make all the difference and sort of take you from feeling fairly average to feeling really great, but also sort of sustaining your health and aging healthily. And I came to nutrition in my probably 30s, late 20s, 30s. I'd started off studying languages. That was my passion. I grew up in the UK. I loved spending time in Europe. I studied French and Spanish and lived in those parts in Spain. And came to nutrition because I was just fascinated by how the human body works.
Yes.
And I had, charts up on the fridge, pictures of all the different vegetables and what nutrients they had, and just was really interested, if ever I was going to be attracted to an article in a newspaper, it would be the health articles.
Yes.
And it was my husband actually who encouraged me to just go and study it and follow it as a career, which I did. So I retrained at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition in London. And
there's a nutritionist school there.
Yes, right. There's quite a few, but I sort of selected it very carefully. It was a very well-respected one, and I was just so inspired by the lecturers. I just used to walk away from lecture weekends absolutely buzzing. My head sort of, my mind was blown just by the amount of knowledge, and I loved that course because they not only taught us the basics of how the body works, it felt like a medical degree at times, the depth that we went into, but it was then the application of it and being able to look at a client, listen to their history, their health history, listen to everything about their lives, really, just their emotional health as well as their physical health.
That's important. It's all entwined.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then to be able to sort of look at them from a sort of holistic point of view and thinking how all the different body systems interact and really dig deep and find out what those underlying causes of their health concerns were. And that's it's a functional medicine approach that I follow, and it's all about digging deep, finding out the root causes of the problems, and then just sort of fixing those sometimes just very slight biochemical imbalances that can be holding people back with their health. And with you, I feel like we just sort of tapped into a few of those and help to prop up your immune system, for example. And yeah, like it made me laugh about the lettuce, cucumber, tomato, because I've probably said that to hundreds of people since we spoke. But it's so true. It's that sort of misconception about what is a healthy diet and what could be an even better diet.
Absolutely. So it's about the not treating a symptom. It's about, well, what's the cause?
Exactly. Yes.
Getting to the root of that. And I think that's really interesting because you refer to food as being a medicine. You've said that to me before.
Yes.
Which is interesting. A previous podcast said nature's her medicine. Isn't it interesting? So they all intertwine. So food is a medicine. So a lot of people don't really believe, well, actually in my early days growing up, is that we didn't actually eat a great diet. It was quite basic food growing up. And I knew that, I understood that every time I ate something that affected me, and I knew that it was a medicine. But do you still think there's a little bit of ignorance about that because people don't fully believe that how much what they're eating is affecting them?
It is. I mean, I sort of use that phrase because I feel like a lot of the major chronic diseases in the world are preventable.
Right, that must be frustrating.
Yes, yeah. When you think of type 2 diabetes, even obesity, I sort of treat weight gain as a symptom.
Yes.
And cardiovascular disease, sort of the ones that the big killers basically. So many of them can be prevented with a healthy diet, and yet people might go to a medical professional when the symptoms start. And we all know that they could be eating differently, but it's just not having that depth of knowledge to know how to eat differently to then get those changes in the body to kind of reset the balance in the body. It's all about balance. There's a word called homeostasis, and the body is constantly trying to achieve that. It's constantly balancing your blood pressure.
I'm going very tingly. I often go tingly in these podcasts, and I'm very tingly. So you talk about homeostasis. Honestly, I'm going very tingly.
Okay, you're recalibrating for that.
No, it's confirmation.
Right, but it's constantly adjusting your acid alkaline balance or your blood sugar levels and your hormone levels, and your body knows what it's doing, but we just have to support it to do that naturally.
It's interesting because I often talk to you about, when I saw you, was how my body talks to me, speaks to me, and you said not everybody is in tune with it. My body definitely does.
Yes, no, I'm amazed, and I love sort of working with clients like that where they kind of guide me in certain respects because they know what works for their body. They can almost, cravings can be significant like that, and some people can crave unhealthy foods, and there's often a reason that sugar cravings can be really extreme in people who've got a yeast overgrowth in their gut, for example.
Really?
Yes, and it's almost like those organisms can hijack the brain, and sort of they need that sugar to survive, and so they kind of draw you towards it. But other people can feel drawn towards the healthier foods, and sometimes it could be a nutrient deficiency.
Wow, that they're missing. I said body's sort of speaking to them in some way or another.
Yes.
And that sugar can be a real addiction, can't it?
It really can. Yes. Yeah. It's a big problem, and it's so widely available.
It's in everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say to you, so how do we get education out to people? I mean, don't you think it starts with children? And
it does. And I think schools are trying, but it's at a pretty basic level, and it just needs to be reinforced constantly, like most messages. And you're an expert in your field, and others are in theirs, and when you're exposed to somebody else's level of expertise, there's only so much that you can take away from it. So I think it just needs to be constant messaging and consistent messaging. But the trouble is that there's so much information out there that can become very confusing, and people sort of lose their way. And then, we're talking about sort of generic health advice or nutrition advice there. But then what I like to do is bring it down to that very personal level and find out what's best for you and your body. And I always remember when you phoned me to have a quick chat before you booked your first consultation, and we were talking about this and how it's so personal and everyone is unique, and what food is good for one is not good for another. And I used the example of broccoli, which was a funny one to use, and I said, we all know that broccoli is good for you, and I'm usually telling people to eat their greens. In fact, when I left to come here today, my family just went, make sure you tell them to eat their leafy greens, because that's my standard strapline. But broccoli, for some people, it doesn't affect
I'm not the only one.
No, not many. I don't meet many. But for somebody, say, who's got a thyroid disorder, eating huge amounts of raw broccoli could be counterproductive for them.
Wow.
Whereas for you, you have a more sort of severe
allergic
type reaction.
Yes. Yeah, and everybody that knows me, people that went to school with me in the same class, I met up with them, they all couldn't eat broccoli. That is just so strange.
How funny.
All exactly the same age.
Gosh. Oh, that's interesting.
And it didn't come up until I was pregnant with my third child, so...
Fascinating. But, again, that's you and your
Yeah.
unique biochemistry, and
And
there'll be
I
something
thought it
causing
was
that.
Chinese. I thought it was MSG because eating a lot of Chinese, but it wasn't. It was broccoli. Isn't it interesting?
It is. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So we're all individuals. And one thing I did find particularly good about you is that having to do that food diary and write everything down that I actually ate. And I was a bit worried about, oh gosh, if I have a brownie, she's going to think, oh, And so I was worried about anything I had, like an ice cream or a brownie or something slightly naughty. But I say to people, make sure that they're authentic with you. That's just really important, because if not authentic with Amanda, she can't actually help you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do a lot of laboratory testing as well, which is a
Right.
really key tool for me.
Is it?
To be able to dig deeper and actually almost like look under the bonnet, I guess, and find out
Right.
biochemically what's going on in people's bodies. Because we can talk generic food advice, and yes, the food diary is very useful just to get a snapshot of what people are eating. And, I'm looking for things like, are they getting enough protein, and
Yeah.
have they got enough variety of vegetables in the diet, etc. But
Yeah.
even someone who's eating the healthiest diet could have these sort of biochemical imbalances that are going on beneath the surface. And it might be an excess of a hormone like cortisol because they're
Yes.
particularly stressed or they're inflamed, or it might be a deficiency in vitamin B12, and that could be a genetic factor that they were always predisposed
Wow.
to struggle to absorb that. And it's when we look at that level of detail that you can really get down to the nitty gritty of what people need to be focusing on quite heavily with their diet, possibly supplementing.
Yeah.
But we can look at lifestyle factors that can affect the hormones or the neurotransmitters.
So what do you mean by the lifestyle factors?
Things like stress management, sleep, the amount of exercise they're doing, whether they're exposed to lots of toxins, perhaps in their
Right.
work or through a hobby that they do, or just in their home, and that can have a knock-on effect on their detoxification capacity.
So it's a big picture.
It is, it really is. And genetic testing is particularly interesting to be able to just look at what you were born with and then layer on top what your environment is like, because your environment
Wow.
actually influences those genes and how they switch on and off.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I like the way that you said that there's so much information out there. There's so many podcasts on nutrition, and the latest is this does this, and this does that, and this causes cancer, and this doesn't. And that was one of the reasons I sought your advice as well, because I was overwhelmed about what is right and what is wrong. I don't know what to believe anymore. And so there's no generic advice really, is there?
No, well, it's a starting point.
It's a
and
starting
I think,
point,
for
right.
a lot of people, and that's where I start, the initial consultation before we do any tests, I go through some fairly basic areas. Are people eating the right kinds of fats? Are they getting fibre in their diet? Are they drinking enough water? Have they got too much caffeine in their day?
Right, yeah.
All those kind of basics. And that's just the fundamentals that you need to get sorted to then be able to layer on top what are the additional nutrients that you need, what are some things that aren't so in your body that we need to take away, or just are there any imbalances that we need to redress.
That's really interesting. My daughter said she can't eat almonds. She gets cold sores from eating almonds. Isn't that interesting? So everybody is just really, I can eat loads of almonds, so I'm fine with that. So we're all unique. And I so much learned about the healthy fats with you. The healthy fats, the whole foods, the carbohydrates. And I also found that when I was eating the way that you taught me to eat, is that I got a lot fuller. I wasn't as hungry.
Interesting. And that can just come down to the balance of food on your plate at every meal. I feel like snacking has become a fairly sort of modern day phenomenon. I think sort of generations ago, snacking wasn't really a thing, and there certainly weren't so many readily available snack foods
That's true.
as an option. But if you are filling your plate with adequate protein and the right kind of fats and a mixture of sort of wholesome carbohydrates, sort of nature's carbs, as I call them, so things like quinoa, for example, or brown rice or lentils, that you should feel satiated. And that should get you through to the next meal. Your blood sugar should remain stable enough to sustain your energy levels until the next meal. And also I kind of remind people that it's okay to feel hungry sometimes. I think a lot of people they're sort of not so in tune with their hunger patterns.
I love it when I'm hungry.
Do you?
I love it when I'm hungry because I really enjoy my food.
Oh, interesting.
Love it. I love the feeling of hunger. So I don't like say if you're going out somewhere you're not hungry, you sort of don't really feel like eating, but it's really nice to sort of look forward to a nice healthy meal.
Oh, interesting.
I
Yes.
love being hungry.
Okay, yes, which other people would almost feel fear of feeling hungry. And I feel like I used to be like that a little bit. And I really remember sitting in a lecture once, and there was, hundreds of us in there in a big, huge lecture hall in London. And the lecturer just said, "Oh my goodness, it is like lecturing to a bunch of squirrels. You're all sitting there with your pots of nuts and seeds and you're munching away." And he said, "Just stop it. Just let your gut have a rest.
Yes.
You've just had lunch. Just stop it."
Yeah, I could feel fearful about being hungry if there's no food available. That would be very hard. Just imagine what people are going through these days.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing to remember when we are sort of teaching people about how to eat healthily. It's hard and it's a luxury. It really is, because so many people don't have healthy food available to them. It is expensive to eat healthily. It's much more expensive to fill your shopping trolley with fresh vegetables and good quality protein. It's much cheaper to fill it with sort of carbs, sort of snack foods.
I've always thought that.
Things,
I have always thought that. And so one of the topics I want to get onto is the gut,
Mm-hmm.
because it's something that you really taught me. You said to me my immunity was needed some work or dressing. So we worked on my gut. So gut health is here everywhere. So what can you tell us about the gut health?
Oh, we could be here for days talking about gut health. It's a huge topic. It's one of my favourite areas to work on. And I'd say probably 70-80% of the clients who come to see me have got gut issues of some kind. And I feel it really satisfying to work with, because you can relieve them of symptoms that really do affect people's quality of life. And the microbiome is a hot topic. I've had lots of people contacting me recently saying, "I've just watched a Netflix program on the microbiome." And it's great that it's getting out there in the news. And it's not new news to a lot of people in my industry, but it's brilliant that it's getting out there in the media. And we literally are just the tip of the iceberg of discovering how important the microbiome is to us. And I feel like there's so much research in that area at the moment, which is amazing. And not only looking at particular types of probiotic bacteria, but different variations within each of those strains that can be doing different things. And so you're finding very targeted probiotics, some that will be helping with anxiety, for example, and then others will be focusing more on IBS type symptoms. And so people
can affect anxiety.
Yes, yeah. So that link between the gut and the brain is so strong. And there's a theory actually that, we are more microbe than humans. We have sort of more microbes in our gut than we have genes in our body. And some people feel that we are just a walking microbe almost, that our only purpose to be on this planet is to house the microbes. And they really are controlling the show in our bodies. They can control how many calories you extract from your food. They definitely can affect your mental health. They can regulate your hormones, just, how you get rid of estrogen. This is both men and women. How you excrete it from your body can be controlled by those microbes. Some of them make nutrients. A lot of them control inflammation. So when I was talking to you about your immune health, about 70% of your immune system is in your digestive tract.
Wow.
They'll be sort of modulating inflammation, which is a very natural body process, but when it gets out of control, it causes problems. The vast majority of symptoms.
So how do you study the microbiome? That sounds fascinating. It seems like it's a big subject though, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, sorry, what was your question?
How do you study that?
How do you study it?
How do you start with people, like individuals that come and see you?
I use stool testing as one of my sort of key tests, and we can look at, it covers about 80 different organisms. So it's sort of like, I'd say, the good, the bad and the ugly of the bacterial world, because I want to know what people's beneficial bacteria are like, because they're almost like the good guys, the good soldiers. And then there's sort of potentially harmful organisms that you find very naturally in a human gut, and it's only when they overgrow and sort of proliferate too much that they can start to cause symptoms. And then there are what we call pathogens, which are harmful organisms, so certain kinds of parasites, and again bacteria, something like Helicobacter pylori that lives in the stomach, and that can cause stomach ulcers and potentially stomach cancers. And so there's all those sorts of things, and it's just getting an understanding of what balance or imbalance is there, but also looking at the actual functioning of the gut and whether someone's producing enough digestive enzymes to break their food down properly.
That's a big thing. As you get older too, as you age, what do you suggest for that? Because as you age, you have less digestive enzymes.
Yes, lots of things slow down, but again, if we can keep our microbiome healthy, they will influence our genetic
Right.
performance, if you like. So we call it genes expressing themselves. They can either kind of switch on or switch off, and there's certain genes that will control inflammation, for example. And if the ones that are switching on inflammation are switched on all the time, then that's when chronic diseases can develop, and things like cancers can develop. And
So it's interesting, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
very interesting. So I'd just like to talk about naturopath for a minute, because how do you feel about supplements? Because I've listened to some podcasts about nutrition, and this nutritionist I listened to recently, because it fascinates me, I didn't quite agree with her when she said you don't need any supplementation. So, and I think you do, from my experience. So, what's your thoughts about supplementation?
I use them as a short-term sort of prop
Right.
for the body, just
Right.
to sort of top up levels, and only where I've done an analysis and found out that people
Really?
need it. And this is where these laboratory tests are so powerful at
Right.
pinpointing what people need.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it might be, taking a certain product for a few months just to kind of redress the
Right.
balance. So for hormone imbalances, for example, or people that are very low in energy,
Mm-hmm.
will actually dig deep and look at how their body is turning fats into energy, carbs into energy.
Right.
And if there are any issues there, it's often to do with nutrient deficiencies, sometimes an amino acid
Right.
that they're lacking in. And so by just supplementing that, even if it's short term, it can just help just to get that balance back, and then the body sort of takes over again and
Yeah.
get it sorted. And the same with gut issues, a classic example. So I might use some antimicrobial herbs. They're all completely natural products.
Right.
Oregano in a very concentrated form has been shown in studies to be as potent as antibiotics at killing off certain harmful
Wow.
organisms in the gut, and then restoring the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria, with probiotics, but with a strong focus on the diet and getting prebiotic fiber into people's diets. And again, just helping Mother Nature to take the reins back again and take control and sort of recalibrate things.
So you wouldn't actually give anybody any suggest any new supplements without testing first? You'd always get it tested. Wow,
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things like, I don't know, fish oils, for example, that, generally I'd be quite happy for people to take them. But very occasionally I'll find that someone actually doesn't have enough of the omega-6 fats and they've got too much of the omega-3 fats. So again, through looking at their blood work. And again, it all just comes down to everybody's unique.
It's scientific. So I went to Naturopath, you put them on the machine, they had a gauge on it. But I was just thinking, how does that work, a gauge? Because it's not really, to me, I trusted her, but is that authentic enough without the blood testing? What's your thoughts on something like that?
I think everyone's got their own methods, and I have mine that I'm happy to. My sort of benchmark is, would I feel confident talking to a doctor or a medical professional about the testing? And the answer is yes. I use very reputable laboratories who go through very, very stringent testing processes. And we look at blood, we look at urine, we look at stool.
Yeah,
it's sort of there's different ways of analysing different.
So it's very
parts of the body.
scientific.
It's very scientific, yeah, which is how I justify acting on those results and then confidently recommending supplements.
That's really interesting, because I think it's bringing in the Western medicine with alternative medicine and natural medicine, and I just think that sort of makes my heart sing.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, and it's just looking at the body as a whole. And you might go to a medical specialist who focuses just on one part of the body, say liver function, or an endocrinologist would be an example who's looking at hormones, whereas I would look at hormones from thinking about, well, what's going on in their gut? Are they constipated? Are they not clearing hormones out of their body properly? Looking at nutrient deficiencies, thinking about whether their liver is detoxifying, say estrogen, for example. Looking at their lifestyle, are they particularly stressed? Are they producing a lot of cortisol that they don't need to be? Sort of piecing it all together.
Yeah, and I think exercise is important too, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I recently taken up Pilates, and I found that really good for not just flexibility, but also for stress levels as well.
Yes, yeah. No, and even just looking at people's genetic profiles, there can be some gene variations that may suggest that somebody might be better off doing more kind of relaxing restorative exercise versus very high intensity, kind of HIIT cardio type classes. And some people who are more prone to injury and might have to focus on warming up, warming down.
Oh, that's so
more than another person.
So it's not just nutrition that these tests look at, also looks at your moving your body. And because intuitively I felt that someone said to me, a friend of mine said, I think you're going to really love these Pilates more than the gym, because I love walking on the beach. I know that's good for me because I can feel my stress go
Oh, that's brilliant.
into the sand, but also the Pilates. And she said, and she's right, I'm enjoying it more.
Great. Yeah. And it's just what makes your heart sing. I went to a dance class this week, which was
lovely.
brilliant. Just felt like it
Great.
just unleashed everything.
Yeah,
And it was
fantastic.
good exercise, but just so good for the soul. I just grinned
So
my
good-
way for an hour.
So good for the soul.
Yes.
So what are the takeaways you give to people? So basically they say they should get tested first before looking at their body, but some people may not be able to afford that, or they're scared of doing that. So what's some suggestions you have for people with nutrition?
I think the key thing is to plan ahead. It's very hard to eat healthily just on the fly. You've got to be organised. I do encourage people to make a sort of meal plan for the week, shop for the week, make sure everything's there in the fridge and freezer, because most people are leading very busy lives and it's hard to fit it in. And I know even if I've sort of got back from the clinic late and wanting to prepare some lunch, it would be so easy just to throw together a sandwich each day, but you just have to say no, and I'll stop and I'll prepare a soup or make a proper salad. And it's so worth the effort just to kind of nourish your body. So I do encourage people to think ahead, even if people are, say, eating out a lot or have to go out with their work or travel, just thinking ahead about what they can take, phoning ahead to a restaurant and asking about the menu and sort of helping them to make those healthy choices.
I think that's really important.
I think variety would be the other thing.
Variety,
just within
interesting.
each of the food groups, getting as much variety on the plate. So amongst the vegetables, just thinking about the microbiome, and that's one of these key sort of themes that has come out of a lot of these series, is just that we do need to be eating 20 to 30 different types of vegetables across the week. It's not just the sort of 5 to 10.
Wow, 30 to 20, what?
20 to 30.
Wow.
Because the more diverse the vegetables, the more diverse your gut bacteria.
So you shouldn't have the same thing every night. You should have different.
No,
wow,
just shopping around
interesting.
different parts of the supermarket and trying out new foods, and even different varieties of protein, different varieties of fat. So I would have talked to you about the healthy oils that we can choose, but using different ones for different purposes and cooking at different temperatures, and just that variety is super, super important, just to get all the different nutrients that you need.
Yeah, so you do recipes, don't you? You have recipes on your website.
Yes, I got lots on my website. Yes, which again, just to be able to dip in on a weekday night trying to feed a family and just feel like you get a sort of good balance. It's about balance on the plate, and that's the other thing that I try and get people to understand is that ideally non-starchy vegetables should be making up half your plate at a main meal, like your evening meal, for example. And often using the palm of the hand as a sort of guide for portion size, because often people will want to know, well, how much of
should I be having this?
Yes. So I think just balance is key. And, you mentioned before about not wanting to write down a chocolate brownie on your food diary. Like, there is a place for treats for some people, but it needs to be a treat, not an everyday.
Well, I had that yesterday. We went out for business, my husband's business. I took the girls out to the Hyatt, and I had a healthy fish on a celery mash, which was beautiful.
Lovely.
But then they had these lovely desserts, and I thought, I'm just going to partake, because I don't eat much of this stuff. I really enjoyed it. I think it's about enjoying having these little treats, isn't it?
It is, and just having a positive relationship with food, but also understanding that sort of every mouthful counts, really, and every meal that you have, you're choosing to either nourish your body or deplete it of nutrients.
That's interesting.
Because I think that was a real light bulb moment for me when I was studying, that in order to turn your food into energy, you need a lot of different enzymes to help make all those chemical reactions happen. And each of those enzymes need lots of different vitamins and minerals to help them work. There's this all teamwork going on in the background. And if you're eating food that doesn't have those vitamins and minerals in, your body has to go off and find them from elsewhere, and you quite quickly become depleted in them. Whereas nature has presented a lot of food in a perfect package, like nuts would be a great example, that they've got healthy fats, they've got fibre, they've got protein, they've got lots of different vitamins and minerals, all of which your body needs to turn that nut into energy to then fuel your body. But if you're eating just a pack of potato chips that have been cooked in a processed oil and it's just, pure carbs without any protein, for example.
Eating things like that makes me hungry, actually.
Yeah, interesting.
It makes me feel yucky and hungry and awful.
And then your body's actually using up its sort of precious stores of vitamins and minerals to turn that processed food into energy.
So do you see that a lot of people that come see you, they actually work on themselves, or some people just can't cope with it?
I have all different kinds. I have a lot of people who eat very well, who are very well educated in nutrition, but they just haven't quite worked out
What it is.
what has gone wrong and what's driving their symptoms. I have other people who probably we need to work on those basics a bit more, just sort of the fundamentals of getting the right kind of things on their plate. I have a lot of people who have chronic health conditions that have just been battling for years to try and get answers or an understanding, and they might have tried, certain diets or supplements or, restricting this, that and the other, and it's just getting that guidance. And again, that's where I use these tests to just give us some concrete evidence of what is happening, to then be able to put a concrete plan in place of how to
That's
how to address
interesting.
things.
I sent somebody that I know close to me who'd quite really young, he had high cholesterol, and I sent them your overnight oats recipe, and their cholesterol came down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it actually
Good.
worked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, that comes back to the medicine as food. There's compounds called beta-glucans that you find in oats, and they're great at helping
So you'd
to lower
find that
cholesterol.
quite exciting, wouldn't you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask you something different now. So we discussed this. So this podcast is called Spiritual Truths. So I know that you don't overly religious or spiritual, but you must have spiritual truths. So Amanda, what are your spiritual truths that you can share with us all today?
I feel like health comes from within.
Wow.
And that we can control what happens on the outside by what we put inside. And so again, it just comes back to every mouthful of food is like a message to the body. It will send a signal to your genes, for example, to then switch on the protective mechanisms or the less protective mechanisms.
So do you think about that when you're eating?
Yes. And again, when I'm making that decision to, am I feeling, like I haven't got the energy to prepare a healthy meal, and then I'll just stop and say, no, this is what my body needs and it's worth putting in the effort. It's a bit like life, I'm constantly saying to the children, you get out of life what you put in. And
yes.
And I think the same applies to the food that we're providing our body with.
So your body's your temple.
Absolutely, yes, it is.
That's one of your spiritual truths in a way. So,
yes.
And you get results. And also, how do you think this helps with quality of life? Because not just about longevity, it's also about quality.
It is, yes. And I think a lot of people would rather live a shorter life but a healthier life. And this is a key part of the genetic testing. It's actually helping you to live that quality life. And just seeing the effect on mental health, for example, that working on somebody's gut or regulating their hormones can have, and just they can have a whole different outlook on life. And that's another of my spiritual truths, I guess, is just wanting to help people and
yes, it is,
tapping into that knowledge and sharing the knowledge. I find it fascinating. I'm constantly learning and being able to share that knowledge with other people to then apply it to themselves. It's a really powerful thing.
Is it ever too late? Is it, some people might have had a terrible diet and they think, you know what, I'm just going to take hold of this. Is it ever too late to change your diet?
No, it's really not at no stage. So even somebody who's been smoking all their life, there's always a point that you can stop. Or the microbiome, is coming back to it yet again, is another example that you can change the profile of your gut bacteria in really quite a short period of time. Or focusing on your sleep, for example, and just sort of getting back into better habits. It will be switching on those protective genes that are going to help to see you through the rest of your life in a much healthier way. So no, it's never too late.
I love that saying, today is the beginning of the rest of your life.
Oh,
so it's never too late to,
yes.
So I would like to read out a card for you. And I used to buy other people's cards, and then I used to hear Spirit talking to me, and it's like channeled messages. So I used to write them in the morning, and I will write some more one day as well. So I chose this one for you. I didn't choose it, I took it out of my pack. It's number 11, which is very much about intuition and tuning in, and that gut. We're talking about the gut. It's about gut feelings,
right? Which
is interesting, isn't it? The gut feeling. So, so I've got for you, wanting some fun, creating memories and time in the sun. Sharing with others, embracing life and what it offers. It's interesting. Because life does offer you something. Life is for living, sharing and giving. Enjoy your time, receiving and giving. We talked about enjoying your time, haven't we?
Yes.
And then this is really relevant for you because you're such a busy lady. At the end it says, relax, read a book. And this feels coming from a lady in spirit. And I also saw a man in spirit around you before as well. And they feel like grandparents. And yeah, I think one of them was very interested in what you're doing in the nutrition as well.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Someone who's very particularly interested in the scientific side of it.
No, tell me more.
I just finished reading this, and it says, relax, read a book. I want you to be happy, eat nice food, enjoy what you cook.
Right. Oh, funny.
I couldn't believe it. And I just felt a taller man with his hand on you, and you were talking about your nutrition, and he just feels like quite a sensible man, but he feels quite a quiet man, and he feels quite a thoughtful person as well.
Right.
And he feels like your grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah, so he just feels he's also quite resourceful as well. And I saw him wearing a lovely blue cardigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know who he is, but he didn't say a lot. He's quite quiet and quite resourceful.
Yes.
Does that relate to you?
Yes. My father's father was a quiet man.
It feels like father's very quiet and a gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah, a gentleman.
Yeah,
but he didn't say a lot, but he loves what you're doing, because I think that's something he would have liked. He knew there was something in diet and nutrition, but it wasn't much open to him back then.
Right. Yes. And I think for my grandparents' generation, it was
Yeah,
very different what was actually available. And
yeah,
but yeah, I think my grandmother on my mother's side, her food was definitely her love language.
yes,
So
absolutely. I
we'd
feel
always
someone
eat.
had a problem with their heart as well.
Okay.
And getting heart, you know, the
Yes.
person who had a problem with their heart,
Um,
because I wish they thought they'd looked after their heart a bit better.
right. Interesting. Yes.
And it was any heart problems in your family?
Not from those relatives, but the book's interesting because that's always my benchmark of. I wish I could relax. I'd love to just sit and read my book, and I never do it. So that was very,
someone else
very
feels someone
relevant.
had a problem with their heart.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I get. So yeah, anyway, so definitely get your grandfather around you.
Oh,
So
lovely.
and keep being social is what I'm hearing for you.
Yes. Yes.
That's really important, because I think nutrition's important, but so is like exercise and socializing's important,
Yes.
and looking after yourself as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really important. So Amanda, thank you for coming today. So how can people get hold of you?
My website's probably the best place to look, amandanutrition.co.nz.
And they just contact you through there?
Yes, yes. I'd be very happy to help.
Oh, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having
Okay.
me.
I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Amanda today, discussing nutrition, something that I'm actually very passionate about myself. This brings Amanda a lot of joy, as she can help people with their whole sense of well-being through what they eat and their diet. Amanda also believes in the scientific side of nutrition and how important this is. This passion she has for helping people find homeostasis within their body is part of her spiritual truth, because for Amanda, your body is your temple. In the podcast, I saw a gentleman standing with her. She was a little bit unsure of who he was, and afterwards she confirmed that's indeed her grandfather. Also, if you would like to buy one of my set of cards, Messages from Spirit, or my book, Breaking Free, you can go to kerry-marie.co.nz, and you can go to contact me and purchase them through there. Alternatively, if you wish to book a reading with me, go to the same website, kerry-marie.co.nz. To help this podcast, please like and then subscribe to our channel. Blessings and love, Kerry-Marie.